Hello everybody, yes I'm from the Heritage Alliance. It's the largest umbrella organisation for the independent heritage sector, so we've got a number of large and small organisations, National Trust being perhaps the largest, Society of Protection of Ancient Buildings, Architectural Heritage Fund, down to some smaller regional and even urban areas like Norwich Heart. And we act as an advocacy group towards the government, and we also do large projects, one of which is Giving to Heritage, which is the one I'm running, and I'll be talking about that in a separate session after the coffee break. But Giving to Heritage is a Heritage Lottery Fund sponsored scheme, with about just short of £500,000 from them to basically train up people from the independent heritage sector, so people in archives and museums, small heritage projects. I'll go through all the detail of the type of organisations who've been represented so far. But we are training people with the partnership with the Institute of Fundraising on a huge variety of different fundraising techniques in our curriculum, broken down into 12 main subjects. Crowdfunding is just one of the many techniques that we're actually training people in how to use, and it mainly comes under our digital and social media workshops. We're running 99 workshops across the country in a period of 2 years. So I just thought I'd share with you some of the feedback I've had so far about crowdfunding in a heritage context, and some tips and maybe even some limitations for the kind of audiences that we're talking about at the moment. I'll start with a very good example of crowdfunding which seems to be successful. I don't want to tempt fate, but there's only a few more days to go and they're just about to reach their target. This is the Middleport Pottery in Stoke-on-Trent. And they are crowdfunding at the moment. When I spoke to the organiser just before I went away about 5 days ago, they had 20 days to raise £20,000 and they thought they were going to reach their target. This is for a restoration of a steam engine. It's very rare to have an actual steam engine in situ in working order. This is organised by the Prince's Regeneration Trust. They've done a lot of good work at Middleport Pottery. And they've already raised £150,000 from various trust and foundation applications, plus one corporate support, and that left a shortfall of the £20,000 I mentioned. And so through crowdfunding over a period of 6 weeks, they reached out to their quite extensive networks. They had 6 mail shots, general mail shots, and then a couple of very specific ones targeted at specific audiences. It's a very well run campaign, and I think they're going to make it. And I think one of the keys to their success, apart from the fact that it's all been very professionally organised, is the fact that they already had the vast majority of the money in the bag. And I think this is one of the main messages that I'm getting from the Giving to Heritage programme. What I would like to share with you today is that crowdfunding rarely works if you're starting from scratch. It's a very good add-on, but people need to know where the money's going. They need to know they're actually contributing to something that's already successful. And I think Middleport Pottery is a very good example, and there are a couple of others that I can give you later. So the other message is, I think, that you have to demonstrate that it's not just about your heritage project. So often fundraising in heritage tends to be kind of rather focused at a heritage audience. Try and make the whole pitch as community-based as possible, applications for the entire community. So for example, one of the reasons why Middleport is successful is that within their £20,000, they're encouraging volunteers, and they're actually going to be training students and volunteers into how to maintain the steam engine. So some valuable skills are being transmitted on conservation techniques. So one example of one that actually did start from scratch and didn't have any money is an emergency project. And I think this is where crowdfunding can sometimes be very successful from a standing start. And this is the Roman circus, the archaeological site in Colchester, about 3 or 4 years ago. And it's been known about for years, but there's a Victorian building partially covering the site that was going to be knocked down for private development, which meant the public couldn't get access to the site, and it just wouldn't be of any use to the local community. So a group of 3 or 4 people just got together who have some very good social media skills. They had 6 weeks to save Colchester Roman Circus and to raise £200,000 to buy up the Victorian building and turn it into a visitor centre. and they did it. And they used crowdsourcing, but a huge, somebody mentioned earlier, the PR campaign around it was actually more successful than the crowdfunding itself. So they got the local press involved, they got the local celebrities. Even if celebrities weren't able to come, they were able to lend their support. People like Dan Snow and Dan Krupchak, etc. They were able to kind of give a quote or little video clip. And they were able to also get an extension. So they, in the end, they originally had 6 weeks. They got 10 weeks, but they raised the money, and now that building is now been turned into a visitor centre, which is open for the whole community. A project that I'm working on at the moment separately, as well as working for the Heritage Alliance, I'm doing a PhD at the University of Leicester. I'm working in Coventry, which is where I was born, where they want to digitise their medieval archives. Now, Coventry was the fourth largest city in the late medieval period, famously bombs in the Second World War and even more destruction after the Second World War, post-war planners. So it's very difficult for the local community to actually see what was there 600 years ago. And their archives are incredibly important, and their archaeological artifacts are all tucked away in a storeroom, nicely stored and preserved, but not available to the public. So an application's been made to the Heritage Lottery Fund. They've got through their stage 1, and that's 190,000. But they need to make this more accessible to a wider audience, not just an academic audience. So I'm working with them on linking with a number of other projects that are community-based, like a medieval walking tour, creating a 3D map, digital 3D map of the medieval city. So actually, I'm working with local schools. Even we're actually doing a small kind of colouring book for children between 7 and 10 years old. So by linking with some other community-based projects, it's raising awareness for the archives, and one project has turned into 3 or 4 projects, which together are going to be linked. We're hoping to raise more money. Crowdfunding will be part of that, and we think there's a lot of people, the older people in Coventry, who remember the city after the bombing and before the post-war rebuilding, who have a great nostalgia for the city, plus younger people who have no idea about their city's past. So just 3 examples there of how crowdfunding can be of use. So just a couple of limitations. Mention the cost, of course, that some of these sites do cost money, and it actually costs more money if you don't succeed. If you do succeed, I think it was Indiegogo, for example, they charge you 4% if you do succeed, 9% if you don't. You absolutely need to have a strong network first before you start, and no point starting if you don't have the contacts already. And as I say, make sure most of the crowdfunding projects that I know of already have quite a large percentage of the money already, so people like to give to something that's already successful. I think that's it. More about the Giving to Heritage project a bit later on.